Hello, I am Rob here at the lair of OmnusI, once more delivering my State of the Dungeon address for the night of September 28th. The game was Werewolf the Apocalypse. In the Caribbean, well, actually in the Umbra. When we started the session, the player characters were in the Umbra, in a special realm that the Ratkin had clawed out of the surface of the Umbra, which spread out throughout so that they could go to different realms quickly. And they had one large bazaar and swap meet between their kind, which naturally attracted creatures of power to it. And that is where the path of the party had taken them as they were attempting to get to the River Erebus. It's a silver river which basically can purify a werewolf and fix what's ailing them through a very painful process, but it's possible to do just about anything that a character may need. But not everybody survives it, so it's not something done lightly. The reason they're doing it is because Vladimir, the Shadow Lord, has a kind of strange case of gnosis vampirism, which is disturbing everybody, and until that is fixed, there's going to be problems. So he is questing along with the rest. Oh, come here. Come here, you. Oh, Magic is joining us tonight. So, he is the reason for their quest, and it brought them to the Were-Rat Bazaar. So, at the bazaar, they were given a pass, basically, to go in, and as long as they stayed out of trouble, they could barter and trade and look for new and exciting things. So immediately the group checked out all the talons that they had earned from the Silverfang Theurge in the group that had assaulted them the previous session. They never really identified everything. So they took a moment and they basically tapped into a great deal of primarily what Aiden knew from his experience with Group Society, but also what the others could glean from their past life experiences. So just about everybody who had past life had a chance at rolling for identifying things. The only one who was pretty much left out was Peter, and Nathan. Nathan's player did not show up because of a lost pet. So it was the three of them, Vlad and Aiden and Nikolai, did a passable job with almost all of the items being identified, and almost every single one of them was something that I had created separately. I have a fun little list of all the different talons and fetishes that I've made up exclusively for this adventure, or for this campaign at least. So, isn't that right? Mm-hmm. Oh my. You're affectionate tonight. Alright, so at any rate, now they had some goods to trade or barter. Not all of the fetishes, or all of the talons really set them on fire. And for those of you who aren't used to Werewolf, talons are like magical items that are very limited one-shot items. Something that would usually take up the space of scrolls or potions in other role-playing games. Fetishes would be your permanent magical items, which you can use again and again, like magical weapons and armor and all kinds of gadgets. So, Vlad decided he was going to go and try to look for something in the bazaar that would help him with his stealth. He was the only one who really wanted to go off on his own. The others... Oh, hey. Oh, you are super affectionate tonight. Oh my goodness. This is a rare bit of incredible affection from Magic, so I'll take it. So at any rate, You want to go off. So I had Vlad's character player make a quick roll to see if he would have any success finding such items. And the night began. He double botched the roll. Werewolf, it's a little tricky to botch. If you roll any successes with the number of dice that you have, you will not botch. You can only fail. He didn't make any successes, and he rolled 2 1s, which is a botch. Not a good one either. Now, his character has a dark secret. His magic, stay away from the camera. His character, before his amnesia, directly... I apologize. Magic's affections are extending to my tripod. I'll just try to settle without it as much as I can. So, he has a secret that if the other Shadow Lords find out about it, find out where he's at least, he could be hunted and killed. At the very least, severely punished for his transgressions. So he wants to keep a step ahead of the Shadow Lords. And when he double botched, I'm like, well, this is just too easy. Some Shadow Lords who were attending the bazaar found him. And are like, yeah, Vladimir. We're funny finding you here. Couldn't be happier, however. Now, one of the items that they found was a tooth. And it was blackened and bigger than a garou tooth. And if you put it in your mouth and activated it, the next thing that you said could not be discounted as a lie. It would be completely believable by anybody who heard it. But it's a single-use item. Well, he used it immediately. I'm not Vladimir. And the gall of it was just astounding. I didn't even think. And he used it in that way. And I couldn't think of any reason why they would then go on to try to hunt him for the bounty that his own clan has put on him. So then it just came down to they were spotted in the Whereat Bazaar by another Shadow Lord, and not one that they recognized. So they said, all right, well, we're here, so we're just going to have to kill you. They did not want to be known that they were consorting with the Wererats for the things that they were there for. And so you might ask, what's the difference? Well, the one case, they really were going to kill him and use everything in their power. This way they were just going to toy with him before they killed him, which gave him a chance. So he tries to run, and this time I asked the rest of the group. Well, Nikolai was low on Gnosis, and he went looking for some way of replenishing his Gnosis. The primary ways of replenishing Gnosis are through meditation, which is tricky. It's done through a rite that's often done at moots, where you can hunt down a spirit, tear it apart, and take Gnosis from it. And I've thrown in a few other ways here and there. They had some Gnosis cookies, which they had gotten from their rite of passage, actually. Eating them gave back a point of Gnosis. Well, so he was looking for cookies. The problem was it's not a common item. It was something that was pretty much just a random manifestation of Gnosis to replenish them for the rite. And it's not something that you can commonly find. So when he asked for it at a bakery in the plaza, the owner of the bakery had no idea what he was talking about. When he described what he wanted, he's like, oh, you want a Gnosis bag. It's a fairly common fetish among the changing breeds, anybody who uses Gnosis. You can stash a couple of points in and use it when you need it. He's like, this is what you need. You need to go over to the Mystic section. And I was using my best accents and such. And, of course, wouldn't you also like to buy a camel? Because my cousin Hassan sells camels, and you should have a camel. Well, he averred on the bread he wanted to sell him and the camel because they didn't have any wealth on them. They just had the talons. So they leave, and then at the same time I'm trying to run both groups because they split the party. And of course with Vlad getting in trouble, he first tried to run away from the Shadow Lords. At first he was succeeding. Then one of them used a rite called Coward's Flight. Or not a rite, it's a gift. Primarily, I believe it's a Get a Fenris gift, but they have it because they are kind of like bounty hunters. Oh, you. Just can't get enough, huh? So, at any rate, they slow him down while the other two go to pin him. And they go to their direwolf form, the Hispo form. And at first, Vlad is doing well at escaping, but then that gift comes down on him and he can't run away anymore effectively. On the other hand, since they all went Krynos and started scaring people, because the were-rats aren't individually very brave, well, a knot of toughs who are tired of the guru basically bullying them got together and they started beating on one of the Shadow Lords. And so that left one of the Hispos chasing after Vlad, and the leader of the group who had used the raid on him. At this point I asked the others what they were doing, and so they're just kind of putzing around. They didn't really have anything pressing to do, only Nikolai was really looking for anything in particular. And I had lots of encounters planned. Different things that they could have gotten, or different displays that they could have seen, or different NPCs they could have met. But that's when Vlad's player said, I'm taking my cannon, I'm shooting at the guy who's doing the right on me. He's doing this in the middle of a bazaar. And I'm like, okay. It's like firing a small cannon. I'm like, okay, go ahead and make your roll. Because of the people in between, and he had a right on him, so he wasn't moving quite right, I raised the difficulty to an 8. He rolled nothing better than a 7. He missed, and badly. I believe there was a 1 in there too, which would have made that a botch. Even if there wasn't, it was a terrible roll into a crowd. So I let him roll damage to see how much there was, and he rolled enough. He rolled basically lethal damage, 7 points. So I'm like, okay. So I rolled first to see who the first person he'd hit would be. It was an old were-rat, but very influential. And so, basically the worst possible target he could have hit. And he rolled nothing for soak. He just splattered his head all over. The next person he hit was one of the toughs who was trying to stop the other guru, the other Shadow Lord who was coming after him. So that stunned his friends, freeing that guru to come after him. And then finally, there's the guard who was going to try to stop the one who used the gift on Vlad, shot his hand that he was going to use to try to stop him. So all in all, it was a terrible shot. So his next thing was I got to try to get in with my past lives to see if any of them will help me. He didn't roll well. One of them is basically just stop embarrassing yourself. Go run into a tent, get some cover, get something to hide behind, because you can't face these guys. Which was true. It was good, wasn't bad advice. So he tried, but that gift is pretty brutal at stopping anybody from running away. However, the gunfire didn't do what it wanted to do, but it did alert the rest of the pack, which they weren't too far away. He hadn't gone very far before this all happened, you see. So they break in. And the Nikolai, who has the Phoenix Dagger, if you remember, said, okay, I'm going to come around. And at this time, the guy with the nasty black knife who was taunting Vlad kind of used shadows and teleported behind him. Matt saw this guy stab Vlad, and he stole his voice. The dagger itself is a nasty fetish called Voice Stealer. It makes a kill a silent kill by taking away the voice of a person that you stab when you activate the gnosis behind it. and you actually have to stab them and give them their voice back in order for them to ever talk again. So Vlad lost his voice, and then Matt stabbed the guy. And one of the things that the Phoenix can do is it can sequester the person holding the dagger and somebody who makes contact with the dagger into a deep umber arena where two can enter and only one leaves. And while it was tense because the guy was a better fighter than Nikolai, my dice turned sour and it was bad. And just basically he dodged the Shadow Lord's attack with Voice Stealer, and then he stabbed him with the Phoenix Dagger. And one of the things with the Phoenix Dagger is if you make a solid enough hit, you can channel your Gnosis through to basically inflict a fiery wound. And Matt, the player for Nikolai, said, well, without me telling him what it was going to do, I'm like, well, you feel like you could extend some of your Gnosis. And he puts 5 points of Gnosis into the attack, which created a 15 die damage flame attack. Needless to say, the Shadow Lord didn't make it, and he died. The Phoenix Dagger is incredibly powerful, so as long as he's got it, he has a chance to do some pretty cool things. It's not going to be the core of my game, however, so I hope he enjoys it while he has it. But while he was gone, Vlad still had to deal with the guru that was on him. The one who had been taken on by the rat toughs had slipped away, but he was then being pinned by one of the guards of the plaza. And the guard was rolling amazingly. He held him down and had him pinned. She went crazy. Okay. Just in time for Aiden to come in and help out. Grace wasn't there at the time, so it was basically Aiden and Vlad who worked together to take out the other Shadow Lord. The old-fashioned way. No, I take it back. It wasn't the old-fashioned way. It was a really old-fashioned way because Peter has a clave now. And he buried it in the guy's back and rolled just an amazingly disgusting damage roll. Everything was a success. All sixes or better. There were a lot of sixes. Which was enough to land a killing blow, even though it wasn't an artfully great blow. He just barely hit him, but it's a silver blade and against a werewolf. So he just cut out the stomach of the werewolf. Using my random die for more silliness on hit locations. It's every once in a while fun, even though it frequently leads to a lot of broken arms and feet and hands. So, Vlad survives. However, he's killed 2 people and injured a guard, and at this point, Nikolai comes back into the bazaar in a huge pillar of flame shaped like a phoenix that licks all the way up to the ceiling. And he comes back, and the guards are like, oh, we want to talk to you. So they drag them off to they march them off to one of the actual permanent buildings. Kind of looked like an old stuccoed building. And there they were met by a very, 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 very rotund were-rat named Devlin. Devlin was oily, generally not appealing to look at, but he was cultured, and he's like, all right, well. He talked to a rat spirit to apprise himself of the situation. He's like, okay. So you committed violence against other guru. That doesn't affect us here. You killed 2 troublemakers. Okay. You do that amongst your own kind. We don't have any punishment for that. These others were... You didn't even strike the first blow, so we're fine. But you, pointing to Vlad, you discharged your weapon, killed 2 people, and injured a guard. Now, injuring the guard itself is usually a death sentence. The 2 that you killed could easily bring you up a death sentence. What do you have to say for yourself? And he's like, couldn't talk. Didn't know how to. Still, Voice Stealer had his voice. So the guy goes, I know about voice stealer. Here, give it to me. Drove his voice back into his body. So now he could talk. And he basically said, you know, this was bad. I regret killing the old man. It's not what I wanted. Had the best of intentions and everything, but so the were-rat Devlin thought for a second. He was like, okay, so what would you give in recompense for your crimes? He's like, well, I got this great rifle. He's like, okay, it is a very nice rifle, and it is worth a fair amount of money, but it's not worth a person's life. And he's like, well, I've got skills. I used to be an assassin. I'm pretty good. And there was a lot of rolled eyes at that. He's like, so what are you willing to do for us? He's like, I don't know. He's like, will you kill somebody for us? Sure, if it means I survive. So again, there's nothing noble going on here about Vlad. No delusions of nobility. The rest of the group, again, rolled their eyes really hard, knowing that they have a packmate who says he'll just kill anybody to save his own skin. So he was taken off, and basically he was made a member of the Ratkin Organized Crime Syndicate back in 1660. The were-rats have numerous means of logistics and things that gives them an advantage over any mortal cutthroats and things. So yeah, so he signed on. He got himself a new dagger and a bracelet that if he tries to attack somebody else in the Ratus Familia, he'll end up turning his blade on himself. To demonstrate that, Devlin instructed him to kill him, and due to a terrible die roll, stopped himself from stabbing himself. So Devlin brings him back up and says, all right, he's fine, he's a good kid, no problem. But here's the thing, what did you want in the bazaar? And admittedly, they didn't know they were going to the bazaar when they got there. So they didn't really want anything. Nikolai's player wanted that Gnosis bag still, so they negotiated. If they gave up Voice Stealer, which is rank 4 fetish, they could get the Gnosis bag, which is rank 2 fetish, and he offered to give them a shortcut to the River Erebus. Now, the party was kind of nervous, because oftentimes when bloated NPCs in positions of power offer them things, there's usually fishhooks in that. But ultimately they turned to Vlad and said, this is your quest. This isn't ours. You make this decision. Personally, I think that you need the journey to appreciate the outcome, and it'll help strengthen you. And Vlad's like, I think I've already failed enough. I don't think I'll ever even make it. And he was surprised when Aiden said, oh, well, we'll just kill you now then. Why should we go to all the effort of going to this river and inconveniencing us when you don't even think you'll survive? You're not worth our time. So he kind of picked that off the floor a little bit, but he's like, we'll take the shortcut, thank you. And Devlin's like, all right, fine, I'll arrange everything. At this moment, Cyrus comes in. Aiden had broken the alert stone that Cyrus had given them when they were ready to leave. So Cyrus comes in the door and says, Devlin, what are you doing with them? He looks at them and said, didn't I tell you you guys should keep a low profile? And they're like, yeah, we're supposed to. We tried. And Vlad's like, hey, I was attacked. I was defending myself. I didn't have anything I could do about it. So Cyrus ends up just walking away sadly. And Devlin's like, it's all right, no problem. Get in the carriage, we'll take you there. So they get in the carriage and they go off to the side of the huge cavern that the city is in. And the guide who was driving the carriage comes out and he's like, okay, we go through this crack in the wall. This will take us right to the River Erebus. So they follow him in. And he goes along and says, okay, leaves them in a chamber and says, I'm going to scout ahead a little bit to make sure it's safe to go. I don't want you coming with me because you're not very quiet. They're like, okay. So he slips ahead. He comes back with a little mark on his face and says, no, okay, we're good to go. Nikolai actually healed him of the damage that he had taken in a scrap against an umbral gnat, but it's the size of a dog. And the guard was fairly impressed. And so they go to the river Erebus. They pass through the realm, and it appeared to be a large chamber with a drawbridge in front of a portal, and there were two guards. One was a Fianna Guru, the other one was a Wendigo Guru. They both had spears with tips of silver. And Vlad tried going ahead, and they crossed their spears in front of him and said, no, we're going to explain the rules to you before you go in, and if you decide not to, now is your chance to turn back. He's like, okay. And they're like, okay, first of all, you have to take the journey yourself. It's very serious. You can die. And nobody gets all the way through without transforming or changing something. If you find yourself afterwards and you didn't absorb the lessons, you'll never have another chance to go back. He's like, okay. And you're like, okay, are you the only one who is going into the river, or are these others? And they're like, no, we don't want to. They're like, okay. Then they are your guests and guides. You can ask them things. She's crazy. You can ask them things. They can advise you, but they can't interfere. They can't do your challenges for you. Okay, fine. All right. Then they say, okay. Well, you're free to go. And at this point, he turns and he goes, can you guys heal me? Because I'm still roughed up after that fight. That Hispo did a rending bite and actually tore his Achilles. It was partially healed. But then Aiden's like, no, you just accepted the quest and they told you we can't help you. He's like, oh, crap. It's just true. It would have been a mark against him had he accepted help and healing. So he's like, okay, fine. So he walks into the room and comes into an antechamber, which is, it's got food and a comfortable place to sit. And the ceiling was this mural of people sitting in a pastoral setting in a picnic, eating and smiling and having a good time. While around them were tapestries and wall hangings, all showing different shape changers, all in horrible pain and torment. And everybody in the group was on high alert. They're like, this is bad. Nobody touched the food. I'm like, okay, so what are you going to do? They looked, they glanced around, but they were determined they were going to fast and wait out the room. I'm like, okay, 10 minutes goes by. 20 minutes goes by. 1 hour goes by. 2 hours go by. 3 hours go by. Nobody's doing anything. They talk a little bit about whether or not they should eat the food as time rolls on. And they thought, well, all the shape changers are getting hurt, but the humans up on top are not. So maybe we can eat the food if we're in Hamid form. It's not a bad rationalization. At the 10-hour mark, he starts looking for secret doors. It was the first time they thought to look for secret doors. There were no secret doors, but they looked. And so there weren't any secret doors. Finally, he's like, I think I have to eat this food. Because he's hungry, and he's tired, and finally it just comes down, I'm just going to eat the food and see what happens. Okay. He ate the food. Instantly his wounds were healed, he was back to full gnosis, and he was prepared to go on. The mural above opened up into a chamber beyond that he had to get up to. And as I say this, I just remembered I forgot one encounter that he had before that. Before that, he went into a room where there was a huge golden set of double doors, with a sun laid out in rubies on one side and a moon laid out in emeralds on the other. And when we tried opening it, it was too heavy. He couldn't pull the rings. When he went to Krynos, the doors turned to silver. But he was willing to pull, so he reached out, grabbed, and pulled, even though he was getting horribly burned, and it left imprints of the sign of sacrifice on his palms. He didn't take any physical damage, as in a level of damage that got him closer to death, but he now has these scars on his palms. And then he went into the room with the food, and that took a chunk of time as they debated that. When he went up into the next chamber, there was a clerk sitting next to a doorway which was completely covered in fire, like a wall of flame instead of a door. So one of the things the guards, the Fianna and Wendigo and the opening said, they told him, in this, you can ask one question throughout the thing, and whoever you ask it to will have to tell you the truth. So he asked the clerk, how many trials are there? To which the clerk responded, an infinite number of trials for an infinite number of applicants, which didn't tell him anything. The question was gone. But he decided he's going to shoulder charge through after giving the clerk his name and tribe. And so he shoulder charges through, and again, this is just a test of faith and determination. So he goes through, no problem. He ends up in a huge room, devoid of any kind of ornamentation, but there's a large arched doorway out, and there's a portcullis that's closing it off, and there's a chest full of treasures, and a huge dragon in the room. And he tried asking the dragon, what do you want? And the dragon is getting ready to breathe fire. And that's where we ended, in the middle of a high point of action. And we'll see how it all pans out next time. While it seems like this entire thing was about Vlad, it was mostly about giving him a chance to develop out his character a bit, and also to let the rest of the members of the group kind of fix their characters on, do they help him? Do they tear him down? Their role in interacting. And don't worry, they will have plenty to do in times coming up. So, but I'm Rob. This is my lair of OmnusI. We had a fun night tonight. And hope that you can keep enjoying watching these videos, keeping abreast of what these characters are going through. Next session will be the River Erebus or Bust. So, until that time, I hope you have many profitable adventures. Farewell.